Healing my wounded feminine energy completely changed my life. And I mean, my life did a 180. I went from being a super hyper independent, strong woman making a lot of money, but also kind of miserable and single for over 10 years and not really any closer to living out her desires, to an 18 months being married to a very masculine provider man, traveling all over the world, moving to another country, and finding new, more fun, pleasurable ways of making money. So if that's something that you're interested in, make sure to watch until the end, because when you really start to understand these concepts, it will start to change your life in very drastic ways and sometimes very quickly. Welcome to this channel. My name is Amanda Abaya, and what we talk about here is we talk about how to manifest the life that you desire without all the extra stress, chaos, and drama that most people are accustomed to. Lately, we're talking a lot about relationships. We're talking a lot about masculine and feminine dynamics. I'm seeing this come up with a lot of clients recently, particularly female clients who are extremely burned out. And a lot of it has to do with these dynamics that we're talking about in these videos as of late. So if that's something that you're interested in, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single video that we have coming out on this channel. I have a pretty audacious goal of how many videos I want to get out every single week. So make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. And if you want extra resources, for example, our free manifestation guide, you can download that below. And you can also check out all the courses, books, and all that stuff that we have available in the description below as well. Okay, let's get into it. Let's talk about how healing my wounded feminine energy changed my life. So let's do a quick recap for those of you who've already seen my past videos and maybe a little bit of a 101 lesson for those of you who are new. So there's wounded feminine energy, and then there is more embodied feminine energy. Let's put it that way. And I've been in coaching for, I don't know, over a decade at this point. And I used to coach a lot of women, still do to a certain degree, about sales, marketing, making money, businesses, all that kind of stuff. Did it for a long time, personal finance as well. And throughout that time, I realized that there were actually a lot of issues that women were having in relationships that were therefore affecting every other area of their life. And it was a lot of data for me to see what this wounded feminine energy looked like. And I came to the conclusion that there's two kinds of wounded feminine energy. The first kind is what I call basic bitch, for lack of a better term. And she is the one who, quite frankly, acts a little bit more like a child. She's the one who's the perpetual victim. She's the doormat. She's probably what most of you think about when you think of wounded feminine. People pleaser, doormat, doesn't have a voice of her own, and is victim to everybody else all the time. In business scenarios, the way that I would see this particular one show up is that she wouldn't be able to get anything done. She wouldn't be able to focus. She wouldn't be able to make any money to freaking save her life because she had like no direction, no structure, no goals, no nothing, right? So that's one kind of level of wounded feminine energy. And then there was this other bucket of wounded feminine energy, which a lot of you watching this channel will probably relate to the most because it's the one that used to be me. And that is the overachiever, the hyper independent, the boss babe, the equality, maybe to further extremes, those of you who might consider yourselves feminists, but like by the modern definition, not what like it originally was. There's that bucket. Most of you are probably in the second bucket, right? Especially if you're watching this channel, you're probably most definitely in the second bucket. And what happens when you're in this bucket of wounded feminine is that when you are in relationships with men, you tend to attract very feminine men, right? What does it look like to be a feminine man? He doesn't step up. He's not providing. He's not protecting. Some of you have been in situations where like he'll provide money, like physically, but there's no other level of provision in your life because it's not just money, and he's definitely not protecting you. And you feel like he's a child that you have to tell him what to do. So that's a lot of what happens. And some of you just aren't even getting to the point where they're paying bills. Some of you are getting to the point where they're asking you to pay half the bills, which I've done lots of videos on why that doesn't necessarily work in relationships, especially if you have kids and small kids at that. It's going to wreak havoc in a lot of different ways. So I'm talking more to the second group of women in this video because that's where I used to be. So that's where I had to do a lot of work. I had to do a lot of inner work, which I've talked about in a lot of other videos. You can check out courses below on how to do some of that inner work. I had to really go deep in there, and I had to do some shadow walks. And I had to really go in there and be like, what are all my beliefs? Where did they come from? How do I rewire them? It was some deep stuff because I realized that I had built an entire life and an entire identity around not feeling safe, basically in the world, period. Because that's what I was conditioned into. That's probably what most of you have also been conditioned into, that men are unreliable for one reason or another. Most of you have also been conditioned into that. Many of you have been conditioned that men are dumb and stupid and you're the one who's smarter and has to have control of everything. Many of you probably also got conditioned into that as well. Mostly it comes down to like not feeling safe and fear of abandonment. That's like the main stuff that goes on there. If I were to really like oversimplify it and try and put everybody in a bucket that they can understand, right? It's two fears. It's the fear of not being safe and it's the fear of being abandoned. The fear of not being safe and the fear of being abandoned is usually what ends up having women go the hyper independent route. Now, for some of you, you had experiences as children that pushed you in that direction. For others of you, the women in your life are the ones who conditioned you to be into that. And maybe you, like me, just come from a long line of controlling masculine women. Right? And that's okay. That's fine. In the case of my family, they had to do what they had to do. There was a lot of stuff going on. And if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be here. Right? So it's the same for some of you, right? You probably were just not modeled how it is to be an embodied feminine woman. Okay. So now let's get into how healing all of this, and I've done other videos on what you can do in order to start healing this, actually totally changed my life. So number one, I manifested my husband. Not only did I manifest my husband, I manifested a very divine, masculine, conscious man, provider, protector, leader, ambitious. Like that is what I manifested into my life once I really started to heal this. And for a lot of you, that's what you tell me you want in a man, but you are so far in your masculine that they literally don't even see you. If they do see you, they probably see you like another bro, is what's going on. So that was number one. Number two, my creativity came back online. So when I was in that hyper independent, very achieving type mode, and I spent way too long there, one of the things that happened eventually over time was that I actually lost my creativity. That might sound kind of weird to those of you who've like known me for 10 or 15 years online, because you'd be like, Amanda, your job was literally creativity for 8 years. You used to write content for like banks in your first business. True, right? But when I went into the second business, which was more like the marketing and sales training and all that kind of stuff, after like 2 years of really going hard, and granted the pandemic happened during this time and all of that, it's like my creativity went completely offline. I couldn't write to save my life. I was literally just repurposing and regurgitating the same stuff over and over and over again. There was no creative thought coming through me whatsoever. There was like a 3-year period there where I couldn't innovate, right? I couldn't get creative. I couldn't have ideas. Like even my intuition kind of felt like it was cut off a little bit. And those of you who relate to being more feminine, you probably relate to being very intuitive. Most women are. And even that felt like it got very cut off for a while. So when I started healing my wounded feminine energy, guess what started coming back online? My creativity started coming back online. And at first it was like a little bit, like little trickles, and then it started coming in like massive ways where it was just like I want to express all the time, and I have all these ideas and all these different projects and all these things going on that I'd like to do. All of that came back online. The other thing that came back online, as I mentioned, was my intuition. My intuition came back online in very big ways where it just kind of points me in the right direction of where it is I'm supposed to go. And not only that, I'm kind of like an oracle for my husband. So I've talked about this before, where women who are in more polarized relationships, one of the things that happens is like the woman who's more in her feminine space, she kind of becomes an oracle in a way for her husband who's out working in the world every day and providing. She's his counsel, right? But not in a I'm telling you what to do kind of way, more in a he's like, "Hey babe, can you like do a gut check on this for me?" kind of way, if that makes sense. And that's one of the reasons why you'll hear a lot of billionaires and men in leadership positions, the ones in healthy relationships, say, "I would not be here if it wasn't for my wife." That's one of the reasons why, because feminine women can tap into realms that men cannot, and then be that counsel for them. So that's one of the things that started to shift. The other thing that started to shift is I started manifesting stuff that I'd been talking about for years at lightning speed when I was doing it. So number one, I ended up moving to another country. I always had a dream of living in other countries. Well, boom, here it came, because my husband, the super masculine provider guy I was talking about, yeah, he happened to have been doing the expat living in different countries thing for 10 years by the time that I met him. So that was number one. And number two, a few years ago, especially when I had to go through my own process of nervous system regulation and healing and all that kind of stuff, I had said a few years ago, right before I met my husband, actually, where I'd said, you know what, I'd really like to get more trained in these things someday. Maybe like I can do it someday, whatever. Well, here's a funny story of what ended up happening. Come to Mexico to visit my husband. We weren't married at the time, but I come to Mexico and he says this to me. He goes, "Hey, so I signed us up for some like holistic healing class. It's like about crystals or something. I figured you'd like it because my husband had gotten into like natural healing and stuff while he was in Mexico to heal some ailments and things like that. And that's very easy stuff to find in Mexico." And he's like, "Yeah, I signed us up for the class with basically his shaman." I'm going to put it that way so people can understand it. So we go to the class, right? And he's like, "It's like a no big deal thing." We go to the class, and it was a very big deal thing. Actually, it was a full-on certification program in holistic healing, energy work. Literally day number one, they were talking about the nervous system and how it affects literally everything going on in your life, and how ancient civilizations already knew that. They just didn't have the terminology for it. And we were taking that class with nurses, with therapists, with doctors. And then I kind of chuckled and I'm like, "I thought you said this wasn't a big deal. This is very clearly like a big deal." So we ended up getting certified in that training on all those different modalities. And then we've done meditation training since then. And now we're assisting in meditation classes here in Mexico and helping all of those guys with their marketing, by the way, as well. So I was like, I didn't even have to go out looking for it. It was in Mexico. Like I just ended up in Mexico, and my husband had already signed us up for this, and he didn't even know that I had had that cognition and that thought. And then finally, the other thing that eventually started coming through, this was the last thing that started coming through, which is I started finding more pleasurable ways of making money, because the truth is I got to know myself a whole lot better. Because when I started healing the wounded feminine energy, I realized that I'd built a life not based on who it was I actually was. That was a life built on me trying to protect myself and be safe. So that wasn't actually who I was. Once I started learning and piecing together who I actually was, then I started coming up with stuff like this YouTube channel. I started coming up with trainings like this. I started coming up with different ways of making money that were far more pleasurable and easy than anything I'd ever done before, from a state of survival and protection. So those are the ways that healing my wounded feminine energy really just completely changed my life. I would like to know from you in the comments, because many of you have brought up that it also changed your lives. I want to know in the comments how it's changed your life. Those of you who said that, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss a single video I have coming out on this channel. Thank you so much for being here today, and I'll catch you on the next one.